Welcome to another great edition of Beacons of Light, and joining me is Tyler Trahan, who is with the Franciscan Experience. Welcome to the show, Tyler.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's an honor for me to be here with you. You've done so much good over the last 5 years. Tell everybody what the Franciscan Experience is all about.
Yeah, of course. So the Franciscan Experience is a program of Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady University. Some people may know it as Our Lady of the Lake College before we rebranded about, now it probably would have been 4 years ago. And we received some grant money that the purpose of the grant was to start high school youth theology institutes. And so it's a very unique experience in that young people from our area and even the broader area, because we've had students come from Florida, Mississippi, New Orleans, to come and experience a very impactful time where they're able to learn what it is to discern vocation. So that's the whole premise of the 5 days that we're together, is to learn what it is that the church teaches us on vocation, on discernment, but also what it is in our call to live a radical life of service. And so, as the name implies, the Franciscan Experience, we look to the life of St. Francis of Assisi, because of course our university is also a Franciscan institution. And so we do service in the community, which is where our partnership with St. Vincent de Paul comes from, which we're super thankful for. And they're able to be taught theology from our theology professors at FranU, because at FranU we do have a theology major where students can get a bachelor's degree in theology. And that's one of the things that makes it really unique, is the theological formation that comes from the entire experience, but then also that heavy emphasis on vocation. So it's a very complex program. There's a lot that goes into it, but essentially it falls under our 3 pillars, or what we call them, which is faith, theology, and service. And so it's, how does our Catholic faith, service in the community, and knowledge of God contribute to our growth, living a life of flourishing, but discovering what it is God has called you to do in this life.
It's a radical call.
It is.
And you're the founding director of this. So,
correct.
So you were there. You had to make it go. And,
yes.
And now 5 years later, when you look back, how does it feel to know that, hey, look at the impact? Because you've impacted students one student at a time, huh?
Absolutely. In the 5 years, so unfortunately because of COVID, we had to cancel last year. So this year will mark our 4th institute, but we've been in existence for 5 years. And actually the concept of the Franciscan Experience came before I even started at the college. And I give it all to divine providence, of course, and just me being in the position that I am, and just so thankful and humbled. So I was hired, at the time it was Our Lady of the Lake College, that in June, and then 3 months later they had the applications open as director of TFE, for short is what we refer to it as. And thanks be to God, He willed for me to be the director of the program. So I've always been on fire and have a passion for kickstarting programs like these, and it was just an amazing experience. And I've been challenged in so many ways personally, in my own spiritual life, my own relationship with God, and having amazing mentors like Dr. Brian Pedraza and Dr. David Whitten with the theology program that have challenged me intellectually, which is kind of a new stage in my formation that I was able to experience going through all of this. And so since its existence, we've impacted about 60 young people in our area, and we've seen many of them go on to be leaders in the church, leaders in their collegiate campus ministries. We've even had one that have discerned into the priesthood, some that have considered the religious life. So you just see so many impacts, and they'll even come back and like our local March for Life pilgrimage that we do, they'll come back and be college mentors. So they just stay so close to their faith, try to stay involved, and it's been such an amazing experience and a humbling experience to witness. Yeah,
well, you've seen that faith growth, that spiritual journey people are always on, and as part of that, the action. Whether it's serving a meal at St. Vincent de Paul, being at the homeless shelter, those are important, I guess. It's kind of immersion from the standpoint of they're really getting to know people who are vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And that's important.
Absolutely. And yeah, the story of St. Francis that we really look to whenever it comes to those types of experiences, St. Francis's encounter with the leper. And whenever we first were building the Franciscan experience, we really took seriously and really took it to prayer on what type of service experience are we wanting to provide these young people. And we discerned different organizations, went and visited with them, talked with you guys, and we really took it seriously. And in St. Vincent de Paul, it was no question, just because in so many ways we were able to have that encounter, just as St. Francis encountered the leper, and further emphasizing how at first, I mean, he was disgusted, right? Like he was kind of turned off and made very uncomfortable. But then seeing Christ in that person and being able to have that encounter transform him to be like, this is a created being of God and desires the same things that we desire, and that is to be loved, that it's to be accepted, and to know their value, know their worth. And that's the biggest impact really that we've seen over the past 5 years, is whenever we recall stories from the young people saying, like, hey, like, what did you like most about it? It was always the conversations that they had. And to give some context, you know, we go out and we do acts of service, so like cleaning the bathrooms. I have never thought that cleaning a bathroom would ever be so impactful, but it was. And but after we do our acts of service, we actually eat with the guests at the dining hall at St. Vincent de Paul. And we do that very intentionally because it allows them to witness that humanity. It allows them to witness the dignity of and the value of the human person and the desires that they have. I can recall one story. We had a young lady that was a participant, and she worked with the Women's and Children's Shelter in the dining area. And the very next day, whenever we visited, she came back and she was just crying. And she was like, Tyler, can I say something? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And she said, like, and just with tears in her eyes, and she asked everyone to pray for this little girl that she encountered, that she had found out that she ended up having to go to the hospital due to a health issue. And she was just so touched and so affected by the relationship that was formed that she asked her peers to pray for them because she had built that relationship with them. And like, those are just some of the powerful things that we experience that changes their entire outlook on how they encounter people in their daily lives, like not just the poor, but just in their future callings, future vocations. How is it do you encounter the person based on the experience that you have here? And so it's been wonderful to see that kind of impact.
And for you, it must be a very, I can just think of so many growth, how much growth that has had in your own personal spiritual life.
Yes, absolutely. And the growth that I've experienced is the importance of the intellectual formation that comes with your relationship with God. You know, growing up, I'm originally from the Diocese of Lake Charles area, and I've been involved with youth ministry since the 8th grade. And I always loved being involved in my faith. So much so, the youth group that I attended was actually like 20 minutes away from where I lived, and praise God for my mom and my parents who drove me every Sunday to go to youth group, but was involved in collegiate ministry at my time in college. And but it was kind of very superficial. It was very much going to Mass. I appreciated the Eucharist, and you know, would participate in praise and worship and own personal prayer, but never really understood and really appreciated the intellectual, the theological formation that comes with building a relationship with Christ. And through the Franciscan experience, and you know, I mean, I joke, there's a quote that's attributed to St. Francis, which I have yet to confirm if it's actually attributed to him, but it says, I have been all things unholy, so if God can work through me, he can work through anyone. And taking that to heart is kind of like, yeah, you know, I was hired for this experience with no formal theological formation, and this being a theology institute. But I had a passion for youth ministry. I had a passion for other people to be in relationship with Jesus Christ, and they took a chance. And here we are 5 years later. And so now I'm pursuing my master's right now, and all focused around vocation and virtue and a life of flourishing, and talking and engaging in theological conversation and seeking the sources out there to learn more about my faith and getting that theological knowledge, where they teach the youth that come to the Franciscan experience, why theology, like why is it important to study theology, and it's and they tell them, how can you talk about what you don't know? And they get that, and that's a part of the impact that we see with TFE is we have DREs and youth ministers from parishes come back to us and say, we have young people that attend TFE that before they weren't really confident talking about their faith, and now after TFE, they're talking about their faith to their coworkers at Chick-fil-A. And so, they're the confidence that they build in being able to talk about their faith and talking about their relationship with Jesus and not being ashamed of it inspires me in my own way, because of course I get so much from them, probably more so than what they receive from me, and that's been so thankful. I've been so thankful for that.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Tyler. When we come back, we'll continue to talk about the importance of our work and the work of helping to share God's love with those in need. For over 20 years, the St. Vincent de Paul Community Pharmacy has served our area. We provide prescription medicines for those who have nowhere to turn for this most basic healthcare need. Please, if you need your medicine or you know a family member that needs their medicine, contact us. Kay, how can they get in touch?
383-7450.
Give us a call today and spread the word so that we can ensure no one goes without their prescription medication. A radical life of service. That's what the Franciscan experience calls their students to follow. And that's a powerful term, isn't it?
Absolutely. And like I said before, we take on the life of St. Francis and we look at his witness, and he was a very radical guy, very radical guy. He did a lot of things in his lifetime that a lot of people would have been completely shocked about. And it's really about the encounter, and it's really about challenging them to really open themselves up to what God may be calling them to. And really, whenever we look at our world and we look at our culture, like even the simplest of acknowledgments of human dignity and really going above and beyond is a very radical statement. And we do that through just that idea of encounter, and just how do we encounter the poor, how do we encounter each other, and just the emphasis of community, and how it's so important as a communal people to come together to worship God, but also to support one another whenever it comes into our vocations.
Without a doubt, and I know for some of the students, it's getting them out of their comfort zone.
Yes.
And that's radical in itself.
Absolutely.
Because to encounter, you got to maybe go into the homeless shelter, or you've got to go into the dining facility. You have to really, to have an encounter and to grow, you've got to be there, right?
Absolutely. And we encourage them whenever we go to St. Vincent de Paul, just as Jesus sent out his disciples 2 by 2, pair up with someone, go in, sit, have a conversation. And that's where the encounter happens, and that's where the transformation happens. Right. And for us as mentors and as leaders in the church, that's our job, is to encourage them, but also accompany them. Right. The word accompaniment is really thrown out there a lot, and it's so true how we are the advocates for that radical life of service. And it's through these types of programs, but it's through that relationship that we form with these young people to walk with them, accompany them, and encourage them to go out and get out of their comfort zones. And that's where the true transformation happens.
And it happens at St. Vincent de Paul, but it happens at some other locations.
Absolutely.
Share some of the other locations that this wonderful ministry assists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so actually St. Vincent de Paul is our only place that we partner with for the Franciscan experience. And And the reason why we do that is for that relationship concept.
Right.
Because during the initial build of the program,
Right.
that was a conversation that we had. Do we go to different organizations or
Right.
do we stay with the same one?
Right.
And we decided, and we felt the Spirit was telling us go with the same one because of the relationship that you form with those that you serve.
Right.
And the participants, whenever they come, they experience that. The people that they meet the very first day, they continue that relationship all 4 days that we're there.
Yes.
And it's enforcing St. Francis and the relationship that he had with those that he served as well.
Right, and that's important, that commitment to doing what's necessary to form that relationship for that encounter and for that own spiritual growth, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. Just as Jesus, if I were to imagine how he encountered the people that he served, whether it was healing the leper or healing the blind man, it was in a place of encounter. It was a place of complete and total love that only God can express. And so that's why we did that.
Yeah, so you made a commitment, and that commitment continues to today. And the growth that you see in the individuals is something you shared with in the previous segment. It's powerful, isn't it?
Absolutely. And again, it's inspiring for us as well, and how we can challenge our own spirituality and our own work in our own community and see how we can better build the kingdom of God in our own diocese or in the larger state of Louisiana and beyond.
Right. And I think as Catholics, I think our call is to share God's love, to do it in a way that calls us to love one another and to put that into action.
Yeah.
And that goes when the students, they do this over the summer, when they go back to their regular life, that's what the call is. Every encounter, that's what it's about, right?
Absolutely, and it's all formed in light of this idea of vocation.
Right.
And a lot of young people nowadays, we see, so we accept 30 students into the program, and in order to do that, you do have to apply, and from the application, we do select them to attend. And one of the questions that we ask them is, what's your idea of vocation? What's your experience with discernment? And there's a lot of young people, and even us, young adults, that affiliate vocation with more of a career. And what we challenge the young people to understand is vocation is not something that's of the future. It's very much a call to holiness now. It's how can you live a life of holiness today? And one of the things that I've been exploring in my studies is how does our answer to that call to holiness now then further inform what God is calling us to do in the future, where it may be career related or maybe mission related. And so whenever they leave, we hope that they take with them, and whenever they ask that question, what is my vocation? The definition of that is transformed to not what it is God is calling me to the future, but how is God calling me to holiness today? And we've seen that, and we've seen that through the feedback that we've received from youth ministers, from DREs. We've had one DRE from the local area that said, they would just come and help us for our parish school of religion, like where there was making copies or just doing those small things that otherwise it would have taken time away from our job to be with the catechist or the students. Like that was just a way that they were able to come and contribute to their church parish. That was their way of living that holiness and just doing that small act of kindness and small act of love. And that's what we hope that they gain from this experience.
Humility, right?
Oh gosh, yes. Humility and community. It's about recognizing your worth and your value, but also recognizing the gifts that God has instilled in you specifically, but also acknowledging the gifts that God has instilled in other people, and how together in that mystical body of Christ, how we're united with each other and united with God, that we come to build a better church and build a better community, and where God is more present now than ever because he is present through us, and how that's just so important to do. Yeah,
and we are all called to do just that, to build Christ's kingdom in such a way that everyone feels God's love. When we come back, we'll talk with Tyler about not only the transformation in the students' lives, but why we're all called to be radical in the way we live our lives, to follow Christ's example, and to share love with everyone that we encounter.
My Bicycle Journey, a book that tells a story. It educates, it promotes, and it also provides some leadership. Take the time to purchase this book, and St. Vincent de Paul benefits from all of the proceeds of this book. Please, if you would, give St. Vincent de Paul a call and let me know what you think of My Bicycle Journey.
A radical way of sharing God's love. Tyler Trahan is with me, and he's talking about the Franciscan University, but Franciscan University has grown to something new. Share that with us.
Yeah, so we were very fortunate and proud to expand the way that we serve our current students on our campus by developing an office that is called the Franciscan Experience, which was inspired by the summer program and for which I have the privilege of serving under. And it's an office that specifically serves our new students on our campus. And so in traditional higher education lingo, it's the first year experience. And that gives us the ability to serve all of our new students from their orientation experience all through their first year. And the reason why we created the office is because we wanted to give our own FranU students that come from all over the area, from different backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, the same experience that we're giving these young people for our summer program, for the TFE Summer Institute. And one of the ways that we try to do that is mostly through this idea of community. And how do we build a community on our campus for which we can build upon one another, we can grow and learn from one another? Because the mission of our university is we want to educate and form Franciscan servant leaders of all faiths. And so we want to put more emphasis on the formation part of it. And we already do a lot of great and amazing things, whether it be in the classroom or through our student organizations or campus ministries. But being able to walk with them and accompany them through their first year, where they're going through their own discernment, they're going through their own vocational processes. And so this gives us the opportunity to provide some resources, provide accompaniment and community building while they're going through those processes.
And we said off camera, if you can't love St. Francis of Assisi, who can you love? But to love him, you got to know him.
Yes.
And you got to know his commitment to Christ's call.
Absolutely.
And so that's what the program does, right? Mm-hmm. It kind of not only educates those who are Catholic, but there are many that are not Catholic.
Absolutely,
and they get that formation, which is a gift.
It's such a gift. And the beauty of our faith and the beauty of our Catholic teaching is that just like the Catholic Church is universal, you know, you don't necessarily have to be Catholic to understand the Catholic values and the Franciscan values for us to be able to be good people and to live a flourishing life and to give back to our communities in that radical life of service. You don't necessarily have to be Catholic to understand that. Living a life of virtue and just understanding how we encounter one another, it's universal. And that's been the beautiful thing about it, is to hear the conversations, to engage with people, whether it be through acts of service that we do on campus or off campus, through our service learning opportunities, and how they grow in their own right, in how they contribute back to society. It's powerful. It is
powerful because FMOL is about healthcare, but it's about healthcare done in a Christian way, a Catholic way. Just like us, the reason why we are called to feed, clothe, shelter, and reach out to the vulnerable, just like FMOL is because of our faith. That's why we do it.
Absolutely. And, you know, Dr. David Whitten, one of our theologians, he gives a talk at our orientations, and he tells these new students, very frankly, you know, your education at FranU is not about you. Yes. And he makes a couple of jokes along with that, but he says, you know, like it is about the people who you're going to be serving after you walk across that graduation stage. Right. It's about them. It's about those people that you encounter, and it's a new way of thinking about it, and it's challenging their intellect. It's challenging their reflection, because they do a lot of reflection assignments and activities through their experience at FranU. It just challenged them to just think about their formation in a brand new way.
Yeah, to grow, which we're all called to do. Every encounter, whether it's being there in a healthcare environment or in an environment like you at the Franciscan experience with the younger, the high school students,
right.
you're getting them to encounter the Lord, the face of Christ in others, right?
Absolutely, and that's part of what's called the Franciscan intellectual tradition, and that is something that our president, Dr. Trahan Holland, always likes to talk about, is the Franciscan intellectual tradition, about how in everything that we do, we aim to encounter the face of Christ.
Right.
Whether that be through our actions, whether that be through the people that we serve, because at the end of the day, everything that we do is aimed towards building a relationship with Jesus Christ, which is where the transformation happens.
Right.
And that's powerful, because whenever you read the students' reflections after maybe service learning experiences or things like that, you can really see how they're starting to see this world in a brand new light.
Right.
Which then, again, like I said earlier, just challenges their way of thinking and how they're encountering the person, whether it be at the bedside or whether they're in our business program and they're running a team of people and how they encounter their team, or whether they're in our theology program and they're encountering their different ministries. It just transforms the way that they think about themselves too, and they validate themselves and the gifts that God has given them.
No matter what walk of life or what profession, with about a minute and a half to go, they take this gift and then they live this gift, and that makes them a radical, just like Jesus Christ was a radical love, right?
Absolutely, and what we try to tell them is to not only live a life of service, but live a life of learning, and that your formation and growing in relationship with Jesus Christ never stops. You know, as someone who is back in school pursuing his master's, I know that even after that point, I got to keep learning and I got to keep growing, and so we challenge them to that.
Well, we are all challenged to grow. Thank you so much, Tyler, for sharing.
Thank you
for
so
what
much.
you do for our community. You do an excellent job. And Franciscan University is so fortunate to have this young man at the helm of that important Franciscan experience. It really makes a difference in the lives of everyone it touches. St. Vincent de Paul it can be a witness to tell you that the program is just out of this world fantastic. The lives that it has touched, the students, is remarkable. But what we see in those guests we serve meals and those guests we provide shelter to is they feel the difference from these encounters, because their self-worth is just, it's absolutely a wonderful experience for them and for us at St. Vincent de Paul. And if you would like to follow Tyler's recommendation that we all grow in our life, go to svdpbr.org and see how you can get involved in our ministry and grow your spiritual life in doing so. See you again next week on Beacons of Light.